Good morning. Today is Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. This is a meeting of the Property Committee, and we have a large group with us this morning, and I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Thorne, and I'll share my screen so we can work through our slides for today.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Yannicone. Again, welcome to the Property Committee meeting, December 13th, 2023. As usual, we'll work from our agenda. Today, we have three main topics we'll be discussing: the middle school renovation additions project, the capital and summer projects update, and the Dewey Engineers agreement coming up with the district. So, if anybody has any questions before we get started, I'm going to turn it over to the design team. Okay, all right. David, Doug, who would like to start?
Sure, I'll kick it off. Good morning, and thanks for asking us to be a part of your meeting this morning. We appreciate it, and we're excited about this project, so thank you for that opportunity as well. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're going to introduce the team, which you've heard a little bit about already, provide you with a project update, review the budget, the schedule, the preliminary information, and then I'm going to turn it over to Team Schrader Group to review the schematic design plans and renderings. So just a quick overview of the team. As Dr. Yannicone mentioned, we are your representatives for this project, and we'll be overseeing the project through completion. Schrader Group is on board. David Schrader and Dan are on the line. They are your architect and structural engineer, and providing the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing design, as well as civil design under their umbrella. But that's being addressed by Snyder Hoffman Associates and T&M Associates. So what have we been doing to this point? A lot. Dr. Yannicone and Kara and Craig and team have brought us on board, but have done a lot of homework before they brought us on board. So it was really a productive start to this process because there was a lot of information gathered, and you knew generally what you wanted to do with this project, which is really a great start. So we've been performing our due diligence, including some of the items, geotechnical investigations. We have a proposal out, and we'll be getting those back on the 15th, so we can start looking at soils conditions, water infiltration testing for stormwater design, and the investigations, obviously, for geotech investigations are also to design foundations and to determine any areas of concern as we put these additions in place. We're going to be looking for a proposal on the 15th as well for the geothermal test well and conductivity testing. We know that we have a test well, or we have a field already in place, geothermal, and we want to expand that into the outfield area of the baseball field. So we're going to take a look and make sure that that area is viable for the expansion of that system. The stormwater system is being cameraed. We're investigating the area specifically where the new auditorium is proposed to go. We do have some concern for some of the soils conditions there, and we want to make sure that we're addressing any stormwater issues in that area before we proceed with that. We're also looking at the existing unit ventilator performance throughout the existing building to see if there's something that can be done with that as maybe as an add to this project as an alternate. And we put out a proposal also due on the 15th for utility locating services. There are a lot of existing utilities on site, and we need to make sure that we understand where they all live. We did have an existing conditions site plan prepared by T&M, or I'm sorry, by Swallow Associates. And there are still some lines that we're not certain where they may live and where they run. So we don't want any surprises during construction, or at least minimize surprises. So we're going to do some additional work to try to determine where some of those lines are. We developed a preliminary program and developed a conceptual design, a schematic design, which, as I said, David and Dan will review with you shortly. And we're investigating sustainability features, such as expanding the geothermal well field and potential photovoltaic panels on the auditorium roof to supplement the power on this project. And of course, we meet bi-weekly, and we're commencing with the land development process, the approval process, which is really the critical path to this project. That process can take anywhere from 9 to 12 months. So we're submitting in December to be heard on January 2nd as a sketch submission, as a courtesy to just get in front of the township to show them what we propose to do. And in fact, I should mention, we did meet with the township preliminarily to talk about the proposed additions, and they are actually impeding into the setback from 309. And we wanted to make sure that there weren't going to be any major hurdles, but we have to get in front of the township committees to make sure that they're okay with our plan. But preliminarily, it looks like we should be okay. You can scroll to the next. So the preliminary project schedule, and again, everything is based on the schematic discussions and design at this point, but we do believe the schedule to be accurate to this point. The pre-design phase, which we're in, will run up through January of 24, so next month, the end of December. The schematic design phase is continuing, and we look to have a schematic design package from the architect by the middle of February, which then we will use to develop further budget information, and we'll continue to look at this project more holistically. Land development approvals starting in January, as I mentioned, and going through December of next year. So this time next year, we would expect to have our approvals in place. The design development process would go through May of 24, and then the team would move into the construction document phase, the documents that will actually go out to the contractors for them to provide pricing to the district. And that would go through September of 24. The bid phase would then be from September, including advertisement, receiving bids, reviewing those bids, preparing a recommendation, and reviewing that recommendation with the property committee and the board would run through December of next year. So we're looking to see numbers by about this time next year. And then once we award contracts, we would be looking to get the contractors on board, even though they can't start construction immediately, by the beginning of the year of 25. So that we can begin to procure products. They have a lot of things to order. There's a lot of lead time concerns. So we want to get them out, have them prepare their schedule, get all their submittals in so that we can hit the ground running when the warm weather hits us. So we prepared a preliminary budget. And again, this is an estimate of probable cost based on schematic drawings. There's a lot of information that we have to gather yet before we can turn some of these allowances into more accurate line item numbers. So the budget starts as a pretty simple sheet, but when we get further along, we'll provide a line item budget for every component that goes into this building to provide you with the most accurate numbers that we can possibly provide. And accurate as well. So right now we have a total, the project is divided into two pieces. There's the construction hard cost numbers, and then there are soft cost and contingencies. So when asked what's your project budget, there's two numbers we look at, the construction cost and the total project cost. So I'm going to review the two items that get us to the total project cost. The hard construction costs are the total estimated cost for the additions at about 12.9 million, and that's assuming 22,000 square feet. That number is kind of pushing and pulling as we work through the schematic design. The estimated renovation cost of almost 22,000 square feet. It's targeted renovation, so we're not renovating the entire building, but we're renovating very specific areas, and we'll talk about those. That's about 5.4 million. We have an allowance for site improvements, and we're developing that site improvement scope now. So that's about 3.5 million as an allowance. So we also have some allowances in place for stormwater repairs. As I mentioned earlier, we have some concern for the area where the auditorium is going to go. So we have monies to address that. Environmental, we have a canopy that we want to replace, a boiler plant, geothermal, well field to support the new additions, and some exterior wall modifications. So those allowances total $2 million. So that takes us to an estimated construction cost of about $23.8 million. And then moving on, we have soft cost and contingencies. So we have fees for permits, professional fees, inspections, approvals, et cetera, of 3.6 million. We have a phasing and logistics number because we know this project will require phasing, which does cost the contractor some additional time moving around. It's not as efficient. We're going to be moving, putting temporary partitions in and things like that. So there's cost associated with phasing and logistics. So we have $500,000 allocated for that. The design and estimating contingency is $1 million. And that is essentially once we learn exactly what this scope is and where the building will, all the additions will land and what other site issues we might have as we look at the design and estimating, this number may be reallocated towards some of those overages. For example, if the 22,000 square feet bumps up a bit, then some of the monies from this would go towards those costs. So we have to make sure we have monies in this early phase to cover that as we're in the very early stage of design. And then we have the construction contingency. Once we award these contracts, we will want to make sure we have monies in place to cover us. We're touching an existing building, so undoubtedly, when we open a wall, we may find something that wasn't intended to be where it is, and we have to address it. And we want to make sure that we have monies in place to address that so that we're being responsible with this project and keeping contractors moving forward. So the total estimated soft costs are 7.5 million. When you take the soft cost and the hard cost, we have a total estimated project cost of 31.3 million. So that is somebody says, what's the project cost? It's 31.3. That excludes the classroom vertical unit ventilators, which we're taking a look at to see if there's something we can do. Those funds would come from maybe capital or some other location. I would defer to Kara for that. Maybe field improvements. It's uncertain if there'll be capital projects or part of the project, or maybe it'll be a combination of the two. Corridor floor replacement. We know that some of those floors are tired, so we're looking at possibly putting that in as an alternate bid to see if we can include it as part of the project. And there's furniture, fixture, and equipment that's included as part of the project. But if we want to consider other classrooms that aren't part of this project, we'd have to, again, look for those fees outside of this amount. But we are considering that as we work through this process. That covers the budget, unless anyone has any comments on that. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to David and Dan. I will say that this is the overall site plan, David, just so you know. The next plan is a zoom of this so you can see a little bit better what we're doing. But I'm going to turn it over to David and Dan. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. So Dan is going to carry the presentation away. But first of all, thank you very much for having us here this morning. For those of you who are new to the board, we're the folks that also worked on the high school project and the Enfield project, and actually your playing fields where the old Enfield was. So just to give you a sense of the kinds of things that we've been able to work on with you. And Dewey has been our partner in each of these. So the process that you're hearing Doug explain is the same process we've been through with your district, and it certainly assures a clean team process as well as a good schedule. So I'm excited about this. We're excited to be part of it. Dan's the project manager, and he knows everything about the concepts we're going to walk through. He's smiling as I say he knows everything, but so hopefully he can do a really good description of what it is we're trying to accomplish here. Go for it.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, once again, I'm Dan D'Amico with Schrader Group. And again, thanks for having us today. Yeah, just starting out big picture, what we're trying to accomplish. Really, the needs of the project, the big addition is to address a performing arts space. And then the interior renovation work that we'll show you, we're looking to start to consolidate different spaces, consolidate classrooms to form legitimate teams for each grade structure, consolidate some of the low incidence classrooms to allow them to help serve each other and be located around a central apartment space, expand the cafeteria, and really start to give the building a new main entrance that's easily defined as you drive around the property. So starting with the site plan, you can see there's a lot of lines on the page, so maybe going to the next sheet would help us. So if you can kind of see, and maybe whoever has the mouse, circle the CR, that would be your main entrance as it is now. So you kind of come in through that parking lot and you kind of pass the main entrance and have to park down on the side. So what we're looking to do is if you follow those green dots around, that's right now the parent circulation and brings you to that star. And that star is going to be where the main entrance is located. So just below where it says entry, there's some spaces inside that we're going to renovate and turn into the main office. Where the current main office is now, we're going to consolidate the clinical spaces located throughout the building and form a central location for them. And then you'll see in the plans, we have a bar of low incidence and the learning support apartment as a facility right there where the mouse is located. And then down at the south end, we're going to expand the kitchen and provide an auditorium addition. A few other things the site plan's addressing. It's kind of, maybe if you want to zoom in a little bit where that green triangle is, but what we're trying to do is currently there's some cones on site that help direct traffic. So we're going to try to make that a little more permanent with some islands, reworking some of the striping in that area. It would be depressed to still allow any emergency vehicles through easily. But as far as day to day, it would be a little more defined path as you come around into that southwest parking lot. We're also looking to add some parking and offset any spots we might take. So on the north, there's additional parking being shown. And there's a little pull off spot for any van drop off right adjacent to where that low incidence and life skills support classrooms are. And then one last thing down south, you'll see there's some red lines on the page there that we're starting to locate as gates to help control traffic and make sure that people aren't trying to skip through parent drop off, and also provide a clear path to the main entrance. There's a sidewalk that runs north-south along the east side of the parking lot, right, and then a main walk that brings you to the main entrance. So really trying to address circulation on site, safety on site for students being dropped off and making their way through. And then again, with trying to clearly define what the entry is to this building.
Dan, could mind if I add one thing?
Sure.
So as I talked earlier about some of the testing that we'll be performing, off to the right side, you see the proposed geothermal well field. Right now, under the field hockey field above that lives a geothermal well field. We're looking to expand that in the outfield, left field and center field of the baseball field. So we have to do some testing. You're going to see some activity on the site. In the winter, you're going to see a truck come out and they're going to actually put in a one single well. They'll drill 200 feet, could be 400 feet, depending on how deep they go to find what they need to get. And then they'll put a small boiler in and they'll perform a test to make sure we're getting the temperatures we need to make this a viable well field for your mechanical system. And then to the left of that, kind of running from home plate up toward left field foul pole, will be the underground stormwater management. We need to find a place to address all the stormwater that comes from the roof of that auditorium and kitchen. And this is an option. So we have to make sure that the site is friendly for infiltration. Today's systems really want to retain and lose the water on site versus the old-fashioned way of collecting it in a basin and letting it run off site to neighboring properties. So we're looking to make sure we have what we need in place. And then at the auditorium areas where we have some geological, issues we want to take a look at. So we're reviewing that. Otherwise, thank you, Dan. It was great.
Can I ask a question about the where we talked about reconfiguring the throughways for parent pickup and drop off and whatnot? We currently have, I guess it's a bottleneck there. I don't know what it is right after school, but the activity pickups that usually happen at like 3:45 and 4:45, you end up with parents that come early and they want to get at the beginning of the line, and you end up with this really long line, but then you have the late buses coming through, and it creates this bottleneck because the late buses need to be there, but the parents are already backed up, and like it's pretty much every day where you have this issue. So a lot of the parents will pull over on the other side of the island where that one gate is and sort of wait and make their kids walk to them. But it seems like a mess every time I'm there. So I don't know what to do about that, but obviously if we're making big changes here, it would be nice to have something put in place to sort of address that going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, this is pretty high level right now. So as we get further along in design, we'll definitely and some of that concerns already been brought to our attention. So we'll work through. A lot of times we'll do not a traffic study, but like an internal circulation plan.
Okay.
And it never hurts to get out there and actually see it in person. So sometime in the new year, it would be good for us to get out there and kind of watch this happen. And then see how we can address it moving forward for sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
I think we can.
Really
I have a
nice to
question
hear.
for Dan
Sure.
also. So also as a parent of the middle school, I pick up at the normal end of the day, and I encourage you all to please come and see what that's like just at the normal pickup, because it's painful. And I just want to make sure, I don't know if the plan is for the buses to stay on that middle school property, but I know because I get there early to pick up, it's not really wide enough. If you're trying to get in and a bus is trying to get out, it's a little dicey. So I just want to make sure everything's wide enough that we can all fit happily and comfortably. And the other comment is about, in terms of just being wide enough, is sometimes people come to pick up and your kid is out and there's people in front of you whose kid is whatever they're doing in the building, and you want to go around them and get out, and you're kind of trapped because of the cones. So just those kind of frustrating things to consider for parents, that even though I totally understand safety has to be important, of thinking about how can we get around people who are kind of permanently parked in a double park area to get out of the building and help that flow of traffic too. Thank you.
For both of our school board members, those are conversations that we have been having at the table, at the design table, since the beginning of the project. We know that the traffic flow is a real challenge. One of the things that will be different is that where you see the CR on the center of the schematic, which is the current main entrance for the main office, which is a point of both entrance and egress for students throughout the school day, that will no longer be the case. There will be a clinical suite here to the right of that CR and a low incidence suite to the left. And so for families and for students, the way in and out of the building will predominantly be where that blue star is. So it's going to shift the flow for families and for students. And some of what you see here in the orange circles, or not orange, sorry, green circles, and those gates are intended to help with that sort of traffic flow. So as Dan mentioned, this is something that we're going to be paying close attention to, and they're going to help us out with, because what we are trying to avoid, as you well know, is a backup on Paper Mill Road. So we're trying to keep the loop as long as it can be, so that cars are off of Bergen and off of Paper Mill, to be able to help with just community traffic flow along the road here. So we're going to keep at it. We know it's a major challenge for the middle school.
Thank you.
Dan, do you want me to go to the next?
Sure. Yeah, we can keep going.
Okay.
So, what we're starting to see here, this would be the lower level floor plan. And like I mentioned, we're looking to consolidate classroom space and make sure that each grade level has space for 2 teams. So what you can see in the right classroom bar would be the teal room that has CR, and you'll see a few of these. And some of those spaces are being renovated to become classrooms. Some of them are being renovated to help serve any additional. I think this one was world language, if I remember correctly. So we met with the principals and staff and talked a lot about the program. We had a meeting specifically afterward, and Jason had a whole plan in his head, exactly laying out where different spaces are, and we've been able to apply that to the plans. So throughout the 3 stories of the classroom wing, what the plan is each grade has 2 teams. Each team will have a science classroom and 2 general ed classrooms that are served by the different departments. Each grade will be serviced by a learning support classroom. And then you'll see in the plans, there's those rooms that are outlined in red. Some of those are spaces that we've actually consolidated down. So that smaller one is now an SGI that could be used for any push out and pull out space to serve reading support or any other learning support activities. The other thing we're looking to do in the building is renovate the toilet rooms. And on each of the floors, they're stacked. We're looking to provide a custodial closet there, but also individual stalls with an open hand washing station. So as you look in there, you can see that it's basically just open. I don't know if you want to zoom in on it or not, but so yeah, it gets a little blurry when you zoom in, but it's not 2 separate bathrooms. It's one open space with what we're showing. I think that's 8 individual toilet stalls, floor to ceiling walls with regular solid doors. And then again, an open area to wash hands. Some of the conversations we've had is, it's gender inclusive. It's easier to monitor any activities that are going on in the general open space. So you kind of see who's going in and out. And it helps, with safety that way. So we're looking to do that in the classrooms, and also we'll get to the second floor. We'll see doing a similar bathroom near the cafeteria. Sticking with this floor, one of the program pieces that we're looking to locate would be a fitness center and a health classroom. Thank you, denoted in those green spaces. So this would be the existing stage, and we're going to recapture that space to provide these 2 new rooms right off of the gym. You also see a purple room in there, and that is an instrument storage. And when we get to the second level, you'll see the auditorium. But the idea is to help utilize the auditorium daily, or at least, not have it sit there most of the time, like a lot of auditorium theaters tend to do. We're looking to use the stage as the orchestra room. So on the right side of the gym, you have your music spaces. And as you come down the hallway, there's a new corridor addition in tan that'll bring you over to the new stage. So on the way, we're providing instrument storage for the students to have a spot to put all their equipment before making it to the actual auditorium. Okay.
Dan, quick question before you move on to the bathroom. So how many stalls were in the 2 bathrooms that are being consolidated down into that one larger open space?
Sure. There, in the women's side, there was 3 stalls, and on the men's side, there was 2 stalls and 2 urinals.
Okay, so we're gaining.
We are gaining a space. I will note that there is also a separate faculty toilet on each floor. I think the second floor has 2. But yeah, right there where the cursor is would be the faculty toilet room.
Okay. And then the stalls are fully enclosed, floor to the ceiling, doors. So it's individual spaces, privacy is, felt, and it's all right.
Correct. Yeah, it's not separated by your typical toilet compartments. They are going to be built full floor to ceiling walls, solid walls.
Okay. And then the hand washing space, is how many? And I don't mean to get into the weeds on something that oh, I see them now. All right, perfect.
Yeah, I think we're showing in these toilet rooms about 3 sinks. And then when we get to the cafeteria, I think there's 4 sinks. There's a few more fixtures there.
Okay. And
yeah.
and then, mentioning the weeds before, how's hand drying work in these new bathrooms?
We didn't get to that point, but we actually do show some paper towel dispensers, but we'll work with Craig and the team about, do we want electric dryers? Do we want paper towel dispensers? And where are they located? So we'll work through all that stuff.
Great. Thank you so much.
Is there any other questions with this plan before we move upstairs? All right. So the second floor is really where the bulk of the work is happening. Sticking with the easy part, again, the classroom wing, renovating the bathrooms, renovating one of the classrooms. I think this one would serve our ESL department. And then again, a few rooms start to open up for flex space and small group instruction. As we move north in yellow, here is where we're starting to consolidate that clinical suite. So throughout the building, there were different counselors utilizing those small rooms in the classroom wing. And now we brought them together into their own suite. So there's a series of offices. There's 2 conference rooms. One of the conference rooms will have some casework and a kitchenette included in that. And then also their own toilet room. One of the things we like about the location here is it's close to that low incidence suite to the north. So there's a lot of interaction between those 2 departments. And it gives them a nice clear spot to all be centrally located in the building. Moving up north, we have the low incidence rooms. So again, pulling them out of the 2 rooms, the apartment and one of the classrooms, and locating up here. So now there's a ramp to the left that will provide ADA access to this upper level. Currently, it's only served by stairs, and I think there's a lift, a stair lift, if I remember correctly. So moving away from a mechanical lift and to a ramp that will never break down and will better serve the students as they move from the core of the building up to this upper area. So up here, we have the 2 low incidence classrooms, and then you see the apartment. The apartment will have its own toilet with a shower space in it. And we'll start to fit out these rooms as we move further into design development. Unfortunately, with this space, the structure and the column layout is a little funky, and while we would love to have the apartment centered and flanked on either side by the low incidence classrooms, because of the column layout, we had to push it north to make sure we had the most functional spaces throughout that area.
Dan, if you don't mind, I just would like to highlight a couple of things for our school board members and for the community. So one of the things that we have undertaken in the last year is an assessment of the efficiency of the clinical team. And we've gotten feedback from our students at the middle school about their wishes, because currently our counselors are located in single offices in the academic wing on each of the 3 floors. And our psychologist is with the main office. And then our social worker actually currently is located over here in this office adjacent to the STEM and art rooms. And so one of the advantages of pulling together a clinical suite is that not only will they be able to collaborate as a clinical team, but for a student who may enter the clinical suite in search of a counselor to speak with, if their counselor isn't available, there are a number of other professionals who can service them at that time. And so we really see this as a benefit for our students. The students' feedback thus far has been very positive about having multiple options to see professionals during the day. It also brings that suite off of the main flow of the academic wing so that there's an element of privacy that doesn't currently exist. In addition, the therapeutic support room can also be utilized as a de-escalation space. So if we have a student who's particularly in need of therapeutic support, whether or not they are a member of the low incidence program, or if they're, just any other student in the school community, they'll be able to avail themselves of that space, which will be a sensory space and a de-escalation space for students. In addition, if a student needs to leave the building with a family member, they can do so privately through the current exit. That what is now the main entrance of the middle school will be retained as a door for families to pick up a student through the counseling suite or through the therapeutic support room if that's necessary. And so this will really be a nice addition and change for our team. We'll retain the art room here and the STEM room here. So the low incidence suite will continue to be a part of the everyday main flow of the building for all students. And that's also an important component when we're looking at the location of a low incidence suite. And so I just want to make sure that you were aware of that. And the only other thing I'll mention, because it may come up, is that you are aware that we are installing a lift this winter at this time at this location. And that is because we have students who are in immediate need between now and December of 2026 of access to the STEM and the art classrooms. But this design plan will remove that lift in several years and replace it with a fully accessible ramp through a universal design model, which, as you know, we've been working on at all of our buildings. So all students will be able to utilize that ramp to go to STEM, to go to art class, as well as to participate in any activities that are occurring in the low incidence suites. And then down here, I know both of you have been in the building, this is the current faculty lunchroom that will be converted to another classroom for students, which will be really helpful because we have some new programming that we're interested in providing, and having some extra classroom space will be really helpful towards that end. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of the faculty dining, we can move over to the blue and orange areas. So currently these spaces where it says admin, that area is in the building. Where it says entry lobby, that's exterior. So that would be in addition to infill that space and provide a new main entry, and we'll see some imagery of how that may look. The architecture is really just starting as we move out of the initial programming phase. But along with the admin suite renovation, we're providing a new spot for faculty dining just adjacent to the cafeteria. And there'll be some entry that's shared through the admin, provides a few more toilet rooms for faculty to access, which is pretty nice. But what we're doing in general is, again, trying to consolidate and provide that new main entry and easily identifiable. What we're also doing with the cafeteria is trying to make it feel more of like a commons, a space that has flow, a space that can be easily utilized throughout the day, not just for cafeteria, and something that we see in a lot of projects that we've done recently and in the past, and others that we've visited around the country. So there's a series of spaces. You kind of see there's a 2 rows of columns at the bottom of the cafeteria, and there's a series of small toilet rooms and storage custodial rooms there. We're going to wipe that out and again provide a new open gender inclusive bathroom similar to what we're doing in the classroom wing. There's also a single user toilet in this location with a custodial closet. And I think if I count it right, 1, 2, 3, there's 4 or 5 sinks in this location. This area, I don't have it off the top of my head. I think there was only 3 toilets in each of the bathrooms that are currently there. So not really large enough to serve the nighttime functions for the gym and the future auditorium. So trying to expand that and make sure that we have the facilities needed to serve those nighttime functions. You also see a big square with a circle in a cafeteria. So just making sure that we have space for any shared uses such as wrestling. So this will be wrestling mat, that they can actually use this space, and trying to find locations throughout the building for different uses to participate. And then one of the consultants that we failed to mention earlier is Corsi. They're a kitchen designer. I think we have a meeting set up for next week, so we can start the conversation about renovating the existing kitchen, the kitchen addition, how much space we'll actually need for that, and how that whole area is going to function and service kids for the lunchtime needs. And then the big addition here in purple would be our auditorium. So one of the things to highlight before we get into the auditorium is between the auditorium and gym, there's some grade changes. There's a ramp exterior now that takes you down to the locker rooms. And so when we build this connecting corridor between the gym and the new auditorium, we'll have to take into account different ramping systems to bring you up and down into that area. And providing one of the conversations, make sure it's not a dark and dreary hallway. So we're looking to start providing, glass and natural daylight in there to make sure it's a well-lit space. On the north side of the auditorium, we'll provide a small lobby space and entry. But really, when you get into the auditorium, we're looking at a minimum of 650 seats. So a space that can house the entire student body. Providing an auditorium that has entry onto the stage without stairs. So everyone enters up a ramp or coming down the sides. So currently what we have is a path down the sides that bring you down and around at that stage level, right onto the stage. Again, providing free and easy egress for all participants. At the back of the stage, again, trying to make sure that there's equal access. There's a ramp on the back end of the stage, again, bringing us up from that lower corridor. I'm trying to think. I drew a blank. There's one other thing I was going to mention, but for now, that's the big picture with the second floor. Any questions with this?
Maybe the window, Dan?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So like I mentioned earlier, we're looking to use the stage as the orchestra room. And so what we'll do is similar to some of the projects, I believe Enfield has it. The back of the stage will have a window. So, when there's a performance, we can draw the curtains, we can bring the shades down to block the light. But from day-to-day use, it'll feel like a natural lit classroom space for the students and the staff to use. And it's not just dark, dreary cave for the orchestra practice and lessons.
Dan, before you move on, I just had a quick question. Going back to the ramp, does that take any space from the library?
It does. So if you can zoom in a little bit, there is maybe a little bit more. It's a little fuzzy.
As far as I can go. Sorry about that.
Okay, so there is a dashed line, right? There's a column. Yeah, almost. We have a dashed line. So where the door is now, yeah, right where that cursor is, that's where the door into the library exists. So we're going to pull that doorway down. So that kind of rectangle from where the door is up to where the cursor is lost space. We walked that with the principal and a few other staff members to look at how we could organize it. There's a lot of extra space in the library that we can kind of jostle things around. There's some display cases there that would be displaced, but we're really trying to minimize the area we're affecting. You can kind of see right on the left side of the ramp, there's like a dark wall. And then there's another wall on the other side of that. Yeah, that's the existing wall of the library. So we're going to look to see if some of that space we take could be recaptured in that kind of skinny space, and just kind of push it out a little bit.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Just to note, there is a storage closet that was built after the fact, and then some of the storage up in the STEM labs will be taken for the ramp. And as we had discussions, it didn't seem like that was a major conflict. And then the third floor, really nothing going up here. Again, renovating the toilet rooms. And then the rooms that you see in the red highlights are not open, but they're given back for different uses. So that's where some of the counselors were located. And like we mentioned, they're going to be consolidated to the clinical suite.
Going back to your comment on toilets, there's another bank of toilets on the lower level, like at the bottom of the stairs where the main entry will be. Is anything happen with them, or are they going to stay as they are currently? Go up to the next level, or the lower level.
The lower level?
Yeah, so the area by the stairs, which would be directly under the new main entrance, there's 2 separate bathrooms there.
Yeah, you know,
Or not even those, to the right of there.
These?
Come back.
no, underneath the main staircase. Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, these.
Yeah.
That's a good point. We'll have to look to see how these are ADA wise. One of the main reasons why we're renovating the toilet rooms is to make sure they're ADA accessible. So we'll look to see what we can do with those toilet rooms, but currently we had not discussed renovating them. Okay,
and those are the ones that, like, when we're there for shows and whatnot, those are the ones that seem like they get highly trafficked, and it seems like they might be hangouts for kids, because every time I go in there, the sinks are plugged with, paper towels and stuff like that. And it's like, maybe if they had the renovation as well, they'd be less of a hangout. I don't know. I'm not there every day, so.
No, thanks, Neil. That's a good thing to point out. We did have the team go and take a close look at the locker rooms, because as you know, 2 primary goals of this renovation are universal design and accessibility. And so we've been, in particular, paying attention to the restrooms, because we know that there have been more contemporary changes in design for new buildings that are safer, that minimize the temptation of students to get involved in behaviors they shouldn't, such as vaping in a bathroom, and also provide just the level of accessibility that we don't currently have. So we can take another look at those 2 restrooms. I will say that with regard to the theater program and shows, things are going to shift, because right now that happens because the students are moving into the gymnasium area, which is where the stage is. And so when we have the auditorium and students are working to prep there, they're likely to be using the cafeteria as a staging ground, and they'll be going to these restrooms here. So right now, what the plan we have is that the main entrance to shows and any really public events would be through this entry lobby, turning right, and then there would be receptions perhaps in the cafeteria area or in this lobby area. Again, we're looking at potentially not having a wall here, so that it's a commons area. That's what Dan was mentioning, that we would take down the wall to the cafeteria. You would have open access to a universally designed set of restrooms, and then an easy level entrance to the auditorium. And so it would be more likely that students would be utilizing these restrooms for those events now, because they won't go downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there, at the high school, by the gymnasium, we have facilities for like concessions and whatnot. Is there anything like that being included here?
We haven't spoken about that specifically, but I'll say that we're going to be moving all 3 administrators into the main office area. And we've been talking about what to do about the room across from it, which is currently Mrs. Brady's office. So in theory, that was a student council office with it like a ticket window kind of thing. We could talk about that. That's something we can make a note of, because it would be a logical location for something like that, unless they were to utilize what's gonna be like the point of sale in the newer renovated lunchroom.
Okay,
Because it won't be that flat wall that it is now. The idea is to create more of an area that's similar to the high school
okay, great.
for the students to be able to walk in to get to the different stations.
Yeah, they're great questions, Neil. I think we could, Dr. Yannicone, look at that area. It's a natural place to think about concessions next to the kitchen and
Yeah,
prep area. So we'll add that to the next meeting agenda.
sure, that sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, so last but not least, just some exterior imagery. Again, this is nothing to get too excited about, as we're really just starting to add architecture and imagery for the exteriors. But high level, looking at the backside of the building, so you have your classroom wing on the right with the 3 stories. And yeah, Dr. Yannicone, where you had your mouse, as you're coming around the backside of the gym, we have the corridor addition there, providing some windows. And then you see the large mass for the auditorium. Just keep scrolling. And then the opposite side, looking at the front of the buildings, one of the new main entrance there. So looking to kind of pop that up. There's I think a lower image that'll show it glass, but just kind of making a nice transparent beacon to enter the building along the library. Still maintaining a canopy for drop off. We started talking about the last design team meeting about, now that the cafeteria is expanding, we can expand some of those windows to bring more natural light into the cafeteria. So we'll start to show that in future images. To the right, we have the kitchen expansion. So one of the things we're going to be working on is the loading dock configuration, how we get in and out, and not disturb the flow of traffic around, and not provide a dangerous intersection for students, because you kind of see that path that continues. That's the path that goes underneath 309. So making sure that we have a safe intersection and a well-designed area for drop-offs of deliveries.
I just have a question, if that's okay. So as of right now, I'm pretty sure, I mean, when I went there a couple years ago, this was the case. The buses would drop off and pick up where that circle is now, and then the parents would drop off and pick off by the original main entrance. So I'm just curious if both the parents and the buses are going to be in the same space now, because I feel like that would be like a lot in one space and would be causing lots of traffic.
That's a great question, Chase. I think our plan at this point is that the buses are on the high school side, and the middle school students walk under 309 to arrive. And then, so the only people who are coming into this drive would be parents who are dropping off, or we do have some students who ride their bikes to school, and they do come along these pathways or walk to school.
So the new plan is just put all the buses by the high school.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, not to park them by the high school, let me be clear, because Ms. Bell mentioned earlier about where the bus is going to be parked. Unless and until we're able to locate a new location for a transportation depot, the buses that are currently parked along the perimeter near the tennis courts will need to stay there. Yeah.
Okay.
Great question, Chase.
Thank you. Yeah. So here we can start to see the new entry as we fill in between the library and then the new admin space. Yeah, right. So just try and, as we go through, like I said, create a nice open space, something that's translucent, transparent, and it will draw you into the building. Here again, just showing, how we're gonna have an entrance into the auditorium lobby, the performing arts lobby. So again, making sure we provide pedestrian access around the loading dock and how that looks. And really the conversation has been, do we even want to bring people over here, or are they going to be coming through the cafeteria? They're coming through the main entrance. So these are all conversations that we're having right now. And last, unfortunately, but not least, this is in the works. Again, just looking at the big mass of the auditorium, and we're starting to break that down into smaller pieces to help bring the scale down a little bit. The other conversation we'll have as we start getting into our user meetings is, how tall of does the stage fly need to be? So we're hoping to start bringing that roof down a little bit. We're looking at maybe pulling the ramp that's on the back side of the stage out in line with this corridor, so that way the full stage space isn't affected. So these are all things that we're starting to look at as we get really in detail now that we've kind of progressed past the programming part of it.
So next steps, thank you, Dan. It's nicely done. Next steps are conduct the end user meetings. As Dan mentioned, we're going to, sit down with all the respective staff and leaders and start to talk about each individual space, the wants and needs, and then obviously as we develop those wants and needs, compare that against the budget and make sure we're staying on task as we do. But it's important to start to collect that information so we can get down at a closer level and refine these spaces. Commencing with the land development process, that's going in December, should be going in this week. Field investigations and documentation and value engineering as we go through this. We'll continue to look at these spaces as we move along and look for any potential cost savings options as we go. This is obviously the greatest opportunity to save those monies before we get the footprint locked in. Develop the preliminary site phasing plans in close coordination with site utilities, the land development, the erosion and sediment control measures, the geothermal well field, et cetera, parking, circulation, pedestrian traffic, students for sure. So we'll develop a preliminary site phasing plan in close coordination with the district, of course, to make sure we're working around the day-to-day, which is most important. And then develop a preliminary building phasing set of plans. Again, looking after student safety and emergency egress and making sure that the mechanical systems will continue to serve one space while we interrupt another space. So we'll have to take a close look at how all those things are functioning, including electrical panels and things like that. And then continue to manage the budget approvals and the schedule as we move along. So we've made a lot of good progress. We have a long way to go, but it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing this come along.
So I really want to just thank Doug, who's been leading the project for us and just doing a great job on behalf of Dewey. And I very much appreciate David and Dan have been at every meeting and have really been thoughtful and reflective about the mission that the design team internally has had to enhance the middle school. And so we're thrilled to date with the way in which the project is developing and shaping up. And we're looking forward in the future. We have a tentative date, as long as you all agree. We have a tentative date of Wednesday, January 10th, to hold a public meeting and to invite the community to hear a 1 month later version of this presentation. So we will continue to communicate with the township on the matters where we need to do so. As Doug outlined, we're going to continue to reflect on in the interior spaces, things that continue to arise. And I appreciate those that you both have brought up today, both the traffic flow, as well as perhaps an additional look at some other restrooms in the building. And then our idea is to bring forward an invitation to the community shortly before the end of the calendar year in order to invite people to come on the 10th to hear the presentation, to walk in the middle school and see the actual spaces and flow that we're proposing before we take the next steps. So for Mr. DeFranco and Ms. Bell, do you have any questions or concerns or thoughts about what you've seen this morning for the design team that's here?
I just want to say I'm really excited about what we're seeing here today. I don't always get excited for school board meetings, but I woke up this morning and I was like, I'm very excited to see this. So I like this future planning. One question I had, I think earlier in the slides, there was a discussion of looking at the air handlers in the shorter term. And I don't have they been in, is there anything that can be done about that noise sooner rather than later?
Doug, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, I'll try to answer that. We're looking at, and the mechanical engineer Snyder Hoffman, who's working with the team, has done some acoustical review of those. They've taken some readings and decibel levels, and we have identified that the vertical unit ventilators are certainly louder than what a new vertical unit ventilator would be, and we're looking at an alternate bid consideration to replace these while we, do the rest of the work, because there's certainly value in bidding this with the bigger project. The challenge with these are we can look at a potential modification to try to reduce the noise of the existing units, but by the time you put that money into the unit, and by the time we start this construction, these will be around 18 years old, and they probably have a life expectancy of 20 years or so. So it probably makes more sense to consider replacing them than to try to modify them or make them less noisy. So we're still in the early stages of studying that to determine if we can reduce the sound of those, and if we can, and we can come up with a cost-effective solution acoustically, that's something we might be able to do in advance. But my honest response is we probably have to consider replacing these with a newer technology that's not as loud as what they were. Now, there's certainly always going to be some noise to these vertical unit ventilators. It's just the nature of a unit ventilator. But it's really the only viable option in this building, since that's what the terminal equipment is already.
Okay.
I wish I had a better answer for you, but we are studying it to see if there is a chance of what you're asking. Your questions are excellent. I just don't have a great answer for you on this one.
I understand. All right. Well, thank you for the feedback on that.
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. DeFranco, I do want to, and Ms. Green, you can feel free to jump in as you need. I know you serve on both the Finance Committee and the Property Committee. We are looking at the unit handlers, not only at the middle school, but also at Erdenheim, where we have the same challenge.
Okay.
The very same problem. But Ms. Green and I have brought to Finance Committee, and will continue to bring forward the challenges we have from a financial standpoint. You know that we borrowed 10 million to begin the project and to do some other facilities work in the area, some fields work and roofing work. And we've utilized a portion of that 10 million for some of those projects. We are at 31 million and change on the estimate for this project, and we have a 3-year 10 million per year borrowing plan. And so we are tight with regard to our borrowing plan and what we can accomplish. So the unit handlers are likely to be a proposal in the future that will come out of capital reserve or other funds, because they are not able to be covered within these bonds that we're planning on borrowing over the next few years.
Okay.
How'd I do? Okay.
So, and one of the impetus for my question, like I know we've been talking about these air handlers for a while. I don't know, like, are there some that are louder than others? I understand some of our students struggle with hearing their teachers in some of the classrooms, maybe more than others. So like, even if there are specific ones that could be improved because of those situations, like, or are they all the same level of disruption, or are some of them worse than others?
Mr. Thorne, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, certainly. Thank you, Dr. Yannico. Yeah, there are, Mr. DeFranco, units that are noisier than others. So working with Snyder Hoffman, the MEP group, we're looking at some pilot projects, hopefully. A lot of the noise seems to be coming from the return air coming back into the units.
Okay.
It's open to the classroom atmosphere. We're looking at actually ducting hard metal ductwork on each side of the existing unit and running that up into the ceiling and pulling the return air from the common ceiling area.
Okay,
So, yeah, so that would be insulated ductwork that we would install on each side of the existing unit. There are, again, classrooms that are noisier than others, and they're the ones that we would target.
okay,
The consideration there is if we do this and eventually do it to all the classrooms, that we're preparing to put that new unit in there because they will have to be replaced at some point. So we don't want to do this return air ductwork, say this year, just to have to tear it out when you put a new unit in. So there's some of the considerations we're looking at.
great. I completely understand. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Bell, do you have any follow-up questions?
The only one was in the diagrams, and again, I'm not a drawer, a creator, an architect, so I followed the best I could with these diagrams. Is that the what is now the front door will be like more of an emergency type door, not a normal use door. And for the kids who walk to school, I thought that's the door they come in. I want to make sure we're not making them go like all the way around the building in the rain and the snow and the cold, that there's some easier way for them to get in the building. That's all.
That's a great point. I appreciate that. We'll bring that back to the team.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Chase, any questions from you? Any follow-up questions for you?
No, that car and bus question was the only one I had, really.
Okay.
I mean, and I can talk about the ventilators. I know they're definitely loud, and I've been in classrooms where, like, they turn off. I'm like, wow, like this is quiet, way more quieter, and it's a big difference when they're off.
Yes, it's pretty significant. We've sat in the rooms, I've observed in classrooms and sat at near the ventilator versus away from the ventilator, and it is a different educational experience. There's no
Yeah, it really
it's
is.
having an impact. And when they're off, it's fantastic. So agreed. And we are going to share this information as well. Next week, we have our middle school advisory. So we'll also be sharing these sketches and 3D renderings to the students there and see what kind of feedback we get from them as well. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So let me just write this down. I apologize. All right, there we go. David and Dan, I greatly appreciate your participation. These next items have nothing to do with architectural work, and I would love to say thank you and have a great day so that you don't feel the need to continue for the rest of the agenda.
Well, we'll take that and we'll run. We appreciate the opportunity and thank you all for listening and looking forward to the projects. Very excited about them. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you both
Thank
so
you,
much. We
David,
really
Dan.
appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, Craig, do you want to continue with these last few items?
Certainly, Dr. Yannicka. Yeah, and just another thank you to David and Dan. They do a wonderful job. Again, they've been associated with the district for quite a few years now, building the new Enfield and the high school renovation project. So it's a great team. We really love working with them, as well as Doug from Dewey Engineers has done a fabulous job for us. So thank you to all. Okay, so our next topic here is the ongoing capital projects for 23-24. Again, Mr. DeFranco's aware of these projects and how we go about things. So Mrs. Bell, this is I'm sure new for you. So what we do is we have a 5-year capital plan for the larger projects throughout the district. So we have a list, we review them, we go over the budget with Ms. Green, and we try and implement these projects as we move forward. So these ones that you're looking at here on this slide are our current projects. We're replacing the stadium scoreboard with the electric to that, and there's a track and field athletic timing system that we're looking to install as well for our track and field events. So that's ongoing. Currently, our middle school accessibility chairlift at the main entrance area is not operable. So we're in the process of replacing that chairlift. We always look at cameras at high school and Erdenheim currently for additions, for safety, replacing the older cameras. The BAS controllers, that's building automation system. That's on all our HVAC equipment. That's a sustainability project that's ongoing. We don't run all our HVAC equipment 24 hours a day. So we put them on schedules and operate them as efficiently as we can. So there's always upgrades there, as well as the LED lamp replacement. Again, sustainability, reducing our electrical use by putting in the more efficient fixtures at all our schools. So they're currently projects we're going through right now. Okay, so next slide here, looking at the summer capital projects for this summer 24. So we're looking at to put an accessibility ramp at Erdenheim in the rear of the building. Again, this is safety, student access from the lower level to the upper level for the playground, the cafeteria area, to get down to the bottom of the building, the lower playground. So we're looking at that and putting safety fencing around the playground, around the whole area. We had some safety studies done for us, and it was a recommendation to enclose all the areas where the students are outside during the day. So we'll be looking to put safety fencing in with gates where needed. Our maintenance building here, large garage doors have been in there for years. They're beyond their useful life, so we're looking to replace them. Our current transportation facility, we had a study on the structural integrity of the building. So we're doing upgrades there, as well as we're going to paint the exterior of the building, hopefully this summer as well. Just recently, 2 weeks ago, we had a major power failure for the middle school, high school in Erdenheim. PICO came out, they were involved. Our emergency service provider came out. We had to replace quite large fuses in some of this equipment. And both PICO and the service provider said that our main utility pole that's located at Halls Lane and Springfield Way should be replaced. It's several years old. The equipment is antiquated. So we put that on the capital list. Hopefully we'll get that done this summer as well. An ongoing project at our high school pool, the soundproofing of the whole entire pool area. We've had acoustical studies now performed with a local acoustical vendor. We're getting how much and what type of soundproofing material we need. So I've been working with a few vendors. It's just taken longer. It's quite involved to put the soundproofing system in there. So we're still working on that and hopefully get that done this summer. We did replace the sound system in the pool. I hope it's working well. Mr. DeFranco, I know you're involved with the pool quite a lot. So
Sounds good to me.
good. So again, we're looking at, again, the soundproofing hopefully this summer. We always replace sidewalk concrete repairs district-wide each summer that have been damaged during the winter. Again, classroom painting, Erdenheim hallway classroom painting, what we'll do throughout the district. And as I mentioned, the stadium timing system for our track and field events, we'd like to get that in. That involves actually cutting open some of the sections on the turf field on the other side of the athletic track and running equipment conduit underneath for this timing system. And the last is the high school LGI renovation. Hopefully we can accomplish this summer. So there's some of the projects that are coming up. And this slide is 24, 25 and beyond, some of the larger projects that we're doing. So the high school roof phase 3 is the last part of the unwarranted sections of roofing that we'll be doing at the high school. All the district roofs at this point will be under warranty. So the warranties are a good 20-year plus warranty. Some are not 20 years, but many years out. Really a good thing that can close our building envelopes, having these watertight roofs. It's a big benefit. HVAC unit replacement, as we've been discussing for middle school, as well as Erdenheim. New furniture, Erdenheim in the middle school. At Enfield, we were looking at a stair ramp combination in the rear of the building. There's a walker path in the back of the building, as well as bringing students from the first floor level up to the upper second floor level. So we have it listed there to look at that and install some type of ramping stairs situation there. We also want to resurface the high school tennis courts as well as the middle school. The high school would be just resurfacing that top layer, but the middle school would be to repair, actually redo the whole base structure. It's a little more involved at the middle school. We did some repairs there probably eight years ago, and it's time to look at that as well. We're looking at replacing the ceramic tile in the pool, and the high school student bathrooms, renovations in there, new countertops, fixtures, plumbing fixtures, partitions in the high school bathrooms. There's quite a few of them, so that's quite an extensive project. And as Dr. Yannicone alluded to earlier, always looking for a new transportation facility. So there's some of the larger projects that are on the slate for years to come.
Mr. Thorne,
Yeah.
just curious about the tennis courts. How often do they typically need to be resurfaced?
Well, we did the middle school, Mr. DeFranco, again, probably, I'm going to say 6-7 years ago. And at the time, we actually milled up the top, say 4 inches, the blacktop underneath the coating, and replaced it. And they said, you'll probably get 8 to 10 years out of this. And at the time I said, boy, that doesn't seem very long. We should get more. But they were right. I mean, they're ready to be done over again.
Okay. And then aren't the high school courts relatively new, or?
They are. Working, in fact, Doug from Dewey, we looked at those, the top surface that they put down, that coating, it had defective material actually underneath that coating. So there's small holes that are now coming through the surface of that coating. And it's from the base, the macadam that's underneath there. So we did go back to the civil contractor, the site contractor, to see what they could do. Unfortunately, it's out of the 2-year warranty for installation.
Okay.
So it's unfortunate, but I think we're just looking at, just having to replace that coating on the top.
Okay. And is there any way to, and I apologize for asking questions like this, but is there any way to see if that's deteriorating faster, so it's within warranty periods in the future? I mean, I know nothing about tennis courts, so I apologize for asking questions that may not have an answer.
No, that's fine. We actually brought it to the contractor relatively quickly after it was installed. Unfortunately, back and forth, bringing professionals in, looking at it, that's unfortunately just the situation that happened. Is it developed over time. We just didn't get it in that warranty period.
Okay. All right, sounds good. And then I guess any discussions of repainting with pickleball? I have to ask, but that's not a leading question. Answer it the way this,
No,
what the school needs.
Yes, we've had a request. We had a request from the township to consider whether or not we would overlay any of our tennis courts with pickleball lines. I spoke with our health and physical education department at the middle school and the high school to see whether or not they were incorporating it into their net games units of instruction. We do have pickleball nets and lines in the high school gymnasium because the high school does use pickleball as one of their net game units, and students really enjoy it. And the physical education department would very much like us to overlay the high school courts with pickleball lines. The conversation we're having right now is there's 2 orientations you could do for pickleball lining. One would be to go horizontal, right, in the opposite direction of the tennis courts themselves, and then have nets available within the court area. The other would be to put the one court at either end of the tennis courts and
Mhm.
then have mobile nets available. The high school seems to be the better location because unlike the middle school, they are not adjacent to residential homes
Mhm.
because of the noise complaints that sometimes accompany pickleball courts outside. In addition to that, that is a easily secured area so that we can make sure that during the course of the school day, members of the community are not trying to use the courts, which are supposed to be fully available to our students, both during recess at Erdenheim and during physical education classes at the high school. And so we have a plan in place to provide pickleball options at the high school courts following the resurfacing. But not at the middle school because I think those courts are just far too close to the residential homes right behind them. And in addition, we'd like to be able to reserve the possibility of hosting District 1 and regional tennis events, and having the pickleball lines overlaying the tennis courts could be problematic for us. We just hosted a district competition this past fall, and we'd like to be able to do that again with the courts at the middle school. So they'll be just strictly tennis courts.
Sounds great.
Yes, that'd be terrific. And then the high school courts also do not have lights. And so it would avoid after dark nuisance noise from the pickleball. And I'm a pickleball player. I love it, but I do understand that after hours, in particular after sunset, our pickleball playing can be a real nuisance in a community.
Yeah. Okay.
Are there any other questions about this year's, next summer's, or anticipated capital projects in the future? All right, so I'm going to move us on to our proposed long-term planning and retainer agreement with Dewey and turn it over to Ms. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Yannicone. So this slide serves a couple purposes. And I know when you read the Personnel Committee agenda at the last board meeting, and I know Dr. Yannicone will talk more at a board meeting about this, but for the Property Committee meeting, Mr. Thorne is retiring in March. So unfortunately, we are losing a very long-term tenured facilities director that has a lot of internal knowledge. But we are very happy for him. I know he's looking forward to and excited to retiring. So this serves a couple purposes. It's that purpose as a, with these two things as a transitional piece for Mr. Thorne's replacement, which we will be starting that process after the holiday break. And as well as the last three slides, I know, Mr. DeFranco, you serve on the Finance Committee, so looking at all those projects also has dollar signs next to them. So there's a lot of things that are being prioritized that need to be done. So one of the goals for the long-term planning assessment, and we would work with Dewey Engineering. Doug is still on the meeting, so he can jump in and speak to or answer any questions that you may have about this. But basically, the long-term planning assessment is a tool that we would use Dewey for. They would come in with their multidiscipline team to create a facility study or a facility plan. And it would go into all the buildings. It would look at all of projects, all of the things with useful life, put a cost to it, put a budget plan together. It would be an objective document. They have a scoring system that prioritizes what needs to be done at each facility within our district. So it kind of puts financial planning and aligns with the projects that get presented to this committee. So all the things that we were talking about on the last three slides, those would all be introduced into, those would be examples of things that would be in this long-term planning assessment document. And it would prioritize it. It would base it on safety, educational purposes, those type of things with the metrics. And it, again, would allow me to effectively financially plan long-term for our facility needs. So things that we don't know that are coming up, we can kind of look in this document to say, okay, here's the useful life of boilers. I'm going to use the air ventilation systems in both of the schools as an example. Some of the, from my perspective or my lens is, yes, we want to make sure that we get the noise reduction done and do it in a cost-effective manner. But I also don't want to Band-Aid an 18-year-old system when the useful life is 20, because to me, that's throwing money away. And it doesn't make sense if we're going to lose useful life within the next 2 years. And we spend, $1 million on trying to reduce the noise. And then, those things go out of useful life. So that document will allow us to make those types of decisions and do it in an objective manner, based upon the matrix systems that Doug and his team will analyze all of those types of projects. Did I cover that okay, Doug?
You did. It was nicely done.
Okay. You'll see that the initial cost is $45,000. Obviously, when you look at that number initially, it's a large number. However, the extensiveness, what I can tell you in these plans, it was done at my previous district for a lot more. Obviously, the size of our districts brings it down a little bit because of the number of buildings, but it is an investment that I think is worth its weight in gold. Because again, if you look at the last 3 slides, those are some of the projects. That's not touching everything. That's not saying, things that possibly could break because useful life is going out and it's not prioritized in the metric systems that we're talking about at all buildings. So that would be the initial cost. And then there would be an annual update, and that would be captured under the retainer structure, which is the second piece of the proposal. So this retainer structure proposal is an update to our current retainer service that we have with Dewey from February 2017. So it updates rates from obviously 2017 was 6 years ago. So things have changed. And again, it allows us for on-call consultation on buildings, grounds, and situations that may arise. Something that is good with this retainer is that it will be a monthly billing based upon hours actually worked. So we're not getting charged $2,000 every month just because. It'll be if we need to utilize the retainer, Dewey will bill us based upon the hours work, and that won't exceed $2,000 within a monthly time frame. So I think that's a testament to Dewey's partnership with the district. And I think that that's very fair and unlike a lot of retainers that I have seen. But also, again, I'm piggybacking on the fact that we will be losing Mr. Thorne's knowledge. And these 2 things will not only assist the new position or new person that's coming in, putting plans and structures in place, but allowing us to capture some of Mr. Thorne's knowledge, and having Dewey have that information that can assist the person that will be taking over in March. Are there any questions about this?
Yeah, thank you for the for describing this. I guess I'm curious, how common is this type of long-term planning with districts? I know you mentioned you did it at your previous district, and then also, is this something that Springfield has done in the past?
So I can speak on the first thing, and then I can let either Mr. Thorne or Doug jump in on this. What I can tell you from my purview is that this is something that is outside of the norm, I think, of a business administrator, superintendent, a facilities director. This is something that you have engineers and, like I said, that multifaceted team to be able to do. I do believe it's a norm because it allows an objective way to prioritize capital planning. And I definitely will say this, and I've talked to Dr. Yannicone about this. It really helps me to be able to future plan. One of my goals has always been to create a 5-year operational and capital plan. That is very difficult to do without a document like this because it puts real numbers based upon engineer findings and that team finding, and having an objective way to prioritize based upon safety, based upon, educational and all that good stuff, instead of kind of our needs, wants, and wishes that we subjectively look at, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
And Craig or Doug, you can jump in on the second piece or any of Mr. DeFranco's question.
Thank you, Mrs. Green. Yeah, so we have been working with a 5-year capital plan for the last year since I've actually started. So we've identified things over the years, put dollars to them, and that's how we've been moving forward. But this is, I think, really an exceptional plan because of the team that Dewey brings. They are engineers, architects, and they have that the cost analysis is current. You know those prices are real, they're capturable. Dewey would help with all the specification development, the bidding documents. So to have hands-on with Dewey, to really review the whole district, put a 10-year plan together, and have those real dollars, I think it's very valuable for the district. Absolutely.
Thank you, Craig. I will say, Neil, that we do currently work in about 15 to 20 districts serving as the district engineer on retainer. So it is something that we do practice in other districts as well. The fee structure is different depending on what district we're working for and how many schools they have and what, and whatnot. But this is a little bit different than not to exceed 2,000. Normally we would say it's hourly, or we would say it's not to exceed, but or we would say it's a lump sum. But in this case, we really value our relationship with your team, and we do want to continue to work with you. So I felt that a not to exceed was a reasonable approach and a partnership that we value.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for the explanations, and Craig, congratulations. I think you know this, but you will be missed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And if this is okay, I am putting it out to solicitor review, so that we can get it on the board agenda, for the January meeting for approval.
It's 100% okay with me. I know we lost Eileen, so I don't know what the ramifications of that are.
So I think it might be worthwhile, Neil, if we have a follow-up that we send to the full board.
Mhm.
And we can provide a summary, and obviously the recording will be online within the next day or so. But we can also, if you'd like, present this as well on the evening of January 16th, so that the full board has all of the information and are able to consider it at that time.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Okay. I am aware that was the end of our agenda items. I am aware that we have Mrs. Berge with us from the township, and this would be the time for public comment. And so I'll ask if there's any public comment. If so, you can raise your hand, and we can see whether or not you have a question that we can answer.
Stand by, just need to allow that.
Thank you, Mr. Wexler. Okay, Mrs. Berge, looks like you have a question. So Mr. Wexler, can you make sure Mrs. Berge can share her question?
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you. Hello, Joy.
Hi, this has been very interesting. I'm on the Township's Environmental Advisory Commission and also on the Rec Center Planning Committee. And I also meet in my EAC capacity with several students monthly on sustainability issues. So I wanted to hear what the plans are for the building. Delighted to hear about that you're looking at solar for the auditorium roof, and also the geothermal expansion. So thank you very much for your excellent work, all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mrs. Berge. We appreciate you being here and your support.
You've got it.
All right, Mr. DeFranco, are there any other topics that you want the property committee, or the administration to be bringing forward to property in the future?
I'd like to hear that there's improvements coming for the pool. And I don't want to spend anyone's money, but it would be fantastic if in that long-term planning, we were looking at a pool that's actually acknowledges the accomplishments of our swimmers and our water polo players, and of course our divers who don't dive at our facilities. So we've got some pretty impressive programs at Springfield, and the pool is rough. And I say that, I've always said, if it holds water and you can swim in it, it's good enough. But the reality is there are better facilities for our students, and it would be nice to, I don't know, include that somewhere along the line.
Understood.
So,
Understood.
and then I had one question, and this is sort of out of the scope of everything that we've been discussing today, but going back to the fields at the old Enfield site, I understand there's been some work recently on the retaining water basin, and that came up at Parks and Rec the other day, and I just was curious, is that just going through and a punch list item, or, and if no one has the answer right now, I completely understand. I just want to.
I think Mr. Thorne can provide you an answer, yes.
Yeah. So we work with the Montgomery County Conservation District, and they have a set of rules we need to follow. So during construction, that retention basin is actually a sediment basin. So
Okay.
it catches all the muddy runoff from construction. So once that's all been, the construction's over, settled and everything, the contractor is required to remove all the mud, the sediment, and actually put a blend of amended soils and underground drainage. So that's what the contractor was doing the last few weeks, was
Okay.
actually just fulfilling the requirements of the Montgomery County Conservation District. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep. So we'll be also tying in the macadam path from Lantern Lane.
Mhm.
Will be coming up shortly. We'll be using a local contractor to tie that path back in as well.
Great.
Yep.
Thank
So
you.
we're not quite done there yet. It's been a while, but yep, we're moving along.
All right.
Any other questions, Mr. DeFranco?
I'm good. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful presentation.
All right, thank you. And we'll count on you on January 16th, providing the community with the update.
Of course.
Okay, but we're happy to include a presentation if you feel that would be important for the team.
I mean, I just, yeah, I mean, even if it's just a brief one.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Well, I don't think we have any other public comment, so I guess we'll adjourn today's meeting of the Property Committee. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.